Should Manchester United sign Richard Rios for a reported 17 to 20 million pounds? How good is he not only currently but also in terms of his potential? Why do I think Rios is so exciting from a tactical but also from a pure footballing entertainment point of view? And if it's not Manchester United, where do I think the perfect destination for Rios would be? I'm going to be answering all of those questions in this video. So I'll start off by answering the first two together. So Manchester United seem to want to bring in a premium ball-winning midfielder option to play alongside Kobbie Mainoo in the starting 11, which does look set to be Manuel Ugarte for likely between 40 to 45 million pounds. But it also seems like they want to bring in another cheaper central midfielder for squad depth as well, with the club looking like they want to move on all three of Casemiro, McTominay and Eriksen this summer. Now I don't think that Rios is the alternative to Ugarte, and nor should he be, as he's a very different style of central midfielder to Ugarte, and so I think he would be brought in with the view of him being able to play in a double pivot alongside Mainoo, or coming in for Mainoo and playing a slightly more offensive role alongside Bruno Fernandes ahead of Ugarte. And for 17 to 20 million pounds, given that Rios is still only 24 years old, I think it would be an incredibly exciting deal. However, in terms of pure ability and potential, I do think there is a better option on the market, who I'm going to come on to in just a bit. But first, why is there so much hype around Richard Rios in the first place? Well, it's because the Colombian is incredibly unique, not just in terms of his style of play, but also his background. He only signed for a professional club in 2020 at the age of 20, with that club being the biggest in Brazil in Flamengo. But what is even more unique about Rios is that he first attracted their interest back in 2018 at the Under-20 Futsal South American Championship, and so Rios up until 20 years old was more of a futsal player than he was a football player. And this is evident in Rios' game. Due to his futsal background, he has a beautiful fluid technique, really reminiscent of the way that Brazil played in the 70s and 80s, as his technique and proficiency with his ball control in congested areas under pressure is absolutely phenomenal, having the dribbling ability of a more traditional attacking midfielder or winger, though being able to carry out these dribbles in deeper areas of the pitch. But before I discuss Rios in more detail, if you want to check out any of the new season jerseys or any retro club or international jerseys, head over to Jersey FIFA. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. Rios plays with such elegance and really embodies what it means to be a South American player. Dribbling out of pressure or stringing a couple of short passes together to play around the press, Rios can do both, making him perfectly suited to dropping into the defensive third during the build-up phase and aiding the ball progression into the middle third. Once in the middle third, Rios also has the passing range, vision and overall creativity from deeper positions to play the role of a regista, getting on the ball frequently, controlling the tempo, but also having the unpredictable creativity that I think would massively aid United, particularly when they come up against sides who drop off into deep defensive blocks, waiting for Ten Hag's side to break them down. Now don't worry, I am going to statistically analyse Rios in just a minute, but I just want to go through what he would offer from the eye test. I think Rios' value to Ten Hag United will come all over the pitch in possession, whereas Manuel Ugarte's value in possession comes mainly through his efficiency in the build-up phase and in the middle third as well. Rios on the other hand has the flair, dribbling and ball carrying ability to offer creativity in abundance, being the exact type of player you want receiving possession in and around his own box under an aggressive press, as Rios alongside Mainoo with Onana, Martinez and Euro behind, and the forward running either side from Dalot and Shaw, gives Ten Hag an excellent set of 7 deeper players in order to play through a press via a series of short passes, with United last season and even in pre-season relying more on longer passes forward from the centre-backs into the forward line. Rios' technical ability, creativity and press resistance would massively improve United in the build-up phase. When United have possession further up the pitch, he can play in 2 different roles. He can either hold a position in the rest defence, providing ball progression via his passing and dribbling from in front of the opposition's midfield line, which would be the role that he plays alongside Mainoo, whereas alongside Ugarte in midfield, Rios could be given more freedom to push further forward in behind the opposition's midfield line. However, I think his real value in this more offensive midfield role would come when United have the ball out wide. See, the issue for United out wide last season was that without an overlapping left back like Shaw or Reguilon to provide constant runs ahead of Garnacho and Rashford, United struggled to progress the ball forward down the channel. Rashford likes to receive the ball and hold on to it stationary, which can be frustrating at times, but it would suit someone like Richard Rios if he was playing alongside Ugarte, either with or in place of Mainoo in the midfield as well, with a ball winner like Ugarte behind him holding his position in the 3-2 or the 3-1 rest defence. Rios can drift into wider positions, creating triangles and diamonds on either either flank with the fullback and wingers on that side, and when the ball is in these areas, United's method of ball progression should become very similar to the kind of rondo that you would see in training. 3v3 or 4v4 on the flank, and for Rios, a former futsal player, this is where he can be in his element. See, most players prefer having space to receive the ball and then drive into, but Rios' futsal style means that his true value can come from him receiving the ball in congested areas, drawing players in, and then using his quick feet and ball control to work the ball around and in behind the pressure, either down the line into a crossing position or back in field into a central position close to the edge of the box. Rios is exactly the type of player that you want when you need to work the ball through a deep, narrow and compact defensive shape, and alongside this he also has the ability to score a screamer from outside of the box as well, as he's done a few times for Palmeiras in a fashion that is very reminiscent of David Luiz. However, Rios still has a lot to develop in his game, and I have to say, as much as I would love him at United, there certainly is a part of me that questions whether a move to the Premier League at this moment in time is a right move for him. See, the style in South America and Brazil specifically is very different to Europe and the Premier League. Generally, we don't see teams press with an organised, aggressive press as much in Brazil as we do in Europe. And I often think that defensive shapes are a lot less vertically compact, meaning that players like Rios have a bit more time on the ball and more space to exploit once they get the other side of the pressing player. And that's part of the reason as to why Brazilian football is played at a slower pace, with less positional rigidity in possession. And so, like with Andre at Fluminense, I think it may be better for Richard Rios' development if he was to first go somewhere in Portugal, Spain or Italy, where the tempo is slightly slower than the Premier League and more focused on technical ability rather than athleticism. I think if Benfica lose João Neves this summer, Richard Rios would be a fantastic replacement. And also, if he was signed by Porto, I think Alan Varela would be the perfect partner alongside him in the midfield, being that holding deeper midfielder in possession to give Rios the freedom to push further forward and express himself. However, this isn't to say that Rios can't handle the physical or the athletic side of the game. To the contrary, I just think he needs a bit of time to adapt. Defensively, he's certainly not as good as Agate, and I'd argue that while Zubimendi is better in terms of his reading of the game, in terms of his defensive and overall tackling ability, I'd have to say that the South American has a bit more aggression in his game, and so he may be the better pressing player, particularly because he's very front foot in his defensive style, looking to jump forward and apply pressure or make an interception. And whilst he can be very good at doing this, he can sometimes move out too quickly, leaving himself flat footed or overcommitted and vulnerable to the quick drop of a shoulder and getting by a pass, which may be an issue in the Premier League. And so after analysing him, you can see that Rios is much more of a pressing central midfielder rather than a holding anchor man like Agate. And so really he'd only be deployed in that single or double pivot alongside Mainu in the midfield if United were chasing the game and needed more creativity from that deeper midfield position. And so in this sense he would replace Eriksen's role in the team, and I'd have to say I think he'd be an upgrade, particularly out of possession, having better defensive capabilities than Eriksen and a whole lot more athleticism, which I think is essential for any player that Ten Hag's bringing into his midfield. But overall, whilst Rios has some standout attributes, his game is very raw and currently accustomed to the Brazilian style of play. However, without doubt, for that price, £20 million, Rios would be a fantastic signing for United in my opinion, but I think a less exciting option on paper that long term could yield massive returns, bigger returns than Rios even, is Mandela Keita from Royal Antwerp, who for me is just a better option all round. Now don't get me wrong, I do really like Richard Rios, but I must admit that some of it is just because I like his style of play and I just want to see him play in the Premier League. But I have to confess that Mandela Keita is not just overall the better player, but one of the most underrated central midfielders in Europe. In my opinion, whilst Rios is without doubt a very technically gifted player, Keita is just a bit more efficient in everything he does, and more consistent, which you'll see when I compare both players' FB ref reports. Keita, like Rios, is very press resistant, capable of receiving the ball under pressure, with his back to goal and fluidly turning out and driving into the space. Although I do think Keita is a level above when it comes to his passing, and we can see this when we compare both players over the past 365 days, when compared against every other midfielder from Europe's next top 14 leagues behind the top 5. You can see statistically that in possession, Keita is significantly more reliable than Rios, having higher pass volumes and completion rates, with the fact that he ranks in the mid to high 90th percentiles for his medium and long pass completion rates, showing how good Keita is when it comes to retaining possession. Rios on the other hand looks somewhat underwhelming in this regard. Now Rios is playing in the Brazilian Serie A and Copa Libertadores, whilst Keita is in the Belgian Pro League, but I think it's clear that whilst the eye test shows Rios certainly has ability, the stats show that he's not yet got the consistent output that I think you need if you're coming into the Manchester United squad. Rios' dribbling and ball carrying are obviously his standout attributes, and statistically this is evident, though whilst I don't think Keita is as good as Rios in this area, he isn't too far off, and I think this will be the main part of his game that he improves over the next few seasons, as he is still only 22 years old. But defensively, I think Keita blows Rios out of the water. See, Rios is typically South American in his style, very tenacious, aggressive and front foot, but Keita is a lot more calculated, whilst also having better reading of the game, and this becomes more evident when looking at both players' defensive sections of their FB ref reports, as Rios' naivety when racing out to pressurise players can be seen as he ranks in just the 5th percentile for the percentage of dribblers he has tackled, and he's also average for the amount of dribblers he tackles and the interceptions he completes, showing that whilst Rios is very active in applying pressure, he does still have a tendency of overcommitting, and he is very susceptible to getting beaten in this regard, which I think would be an issue in the Premier League, given how many central midfielders have the capabilities of dropping a shoulder and driving out of the pressure. Keita on the other hand looks incredible defensively from a statistical point of view, ranking in the mid to high 90th percentiles for the amount of dribblers he has tackled and the interceptions he's completed, whilst also ranking in the 85th percentile for the percentage of dribblers he's tackled as well, showing fairly conclusively from a statistical point of view that Keita is by far the superior midfielder when compared to Rios from a defensive point of view, and I'd argue overall he's probably still a level above Rios. And so to conclude, I'd love Richard Rios at United purely from an entertainment point of view, but my head is saying that considering he'd cost around the same, Mandela Keita would be the better signing. But take Keita off the table, I think if United bring in Ugarte, then bringing in Rios as essentially an Eriksen replacement, as someone who can bring creativity from deeper positions when United are chasing a game, would still be a very good signing. So let me know in the comments who would you prefer, Mandela Keita or Richard Rios, and you can check out some of my other videos linked in the description as well.